Oh my gosh, my computer just like turned off. Can you hear me okay, Cheryl?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. Okay, did we start? Because literally my computer just turned off.
It always happens last minute. Technology problems when you need it.
To restart? Like I didn't get a warning or anything. Okay, we're live. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Wait for a few people to come in.
Mhm.
As you come in, hi, I'm Christina with Pendulum Therapeutics. As you come in, just drop your name maybe in the chat so that we can say hello. We'll get started in about maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Chat is disabled. Okay. Chat is disabled. I lied. Don't do that. Okay, it's enabled. So go ahead. If you're here, say hello. You can try now. Hi, everybody. Okay. All right, I see some people coming in now. Awesome. All right. So we're going to get started. Hello, hello. I am Christina with Pendulum Therapeutics. So just a little bit about me. I'm a registered dietitian by training. I spent most of my early career in the NICU where I fell in love with microbiome science. And I'm currently obviously here at Pendulum, and I have 2 boys, and we love to grow our own food and cook in the kitchen. So next slide, I will introduce our guest. Oh, first we're going to do some housekeeping. Okay, so this is being recorded. So put all of your questions in the Q&A. That's where we'll be directing questions, answering the questions from. Any that we don't get to, we'll try to answer via email after the webinar. If you have any questions about doing a wholesale order or how you can recommend products to your patients, you can email hcpinfo@pendulumlife.com. There's a QR code down in the left-hand corner of your screen, and you can click that or take a picture of that, and you can schedule a meeting with me so we can talk further. All right, next slide. Okay, so really excited to have Cheryl Sew Hoy with us. She's the founder of Tiny Health. So Tiny Health is a leading microbiome health platform for families. She's a serial entrepreneur. I love that. Earned her engineering degrees from Cornell. So she's a mom of 2. And out of her desire to help her own kiddos with their health and have a lifelong of health, she developed Tiny Health. It's microbiome tests to support your family's health through your entire journey. So from pregnancy and beyond. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Excited for this talk. I'm ready to learn. So let's get started. Why is a gut microbiome test important?
Yeah, so great question. And I would even go back to basics a little bit. I'm not sure everyone here of how much you know about the microbiome. Obviously, if you have been aware of Pendulum and in that network, you would know a lot about microbiome. But basically, I'm going to start with the 101. Like we have 38 trillion microbes living in and on us, and we have different ecosystems and communities. We have the oral microbiome. We have a vaginal microbiome, a gut microbiome, skin microbiome. Like there's just all kinds on our bodies, in our bodies, right? The most well-studied part of the microbiome is in the gut because it is very accessible. It is where the most variety and diversity of microbes live, actually. And that's where a ton of research has been done to associate these microbes in our guts to health or disease over time, right? So technically, kind of because we have so many microbes in us and on us, technically when we're feeding ourselves, you think that we're feeding, our cells and all that, but we're technically feeding our microbes too. So you are what you eat, but you're also what your microbes eat, right? So you think about that in terms of prebiotics, in a way, are the food to the probiotics or the beneficial bacteria. So the reason why like a gut microbiome test is so important is because we now know 80% of our immune system lives in our gut. And it's actually the more profound thing that I found through my own two birth journeys with my kids. I had a C-section of my daughter and had a home vaginal birth with my son. That these microbes are inherited from our mom. Where do we get our microbes from, right? So technically the baby's sterile in the womb. We now know that. It was a very heated debate before, but the science is becoming more clear that there's very little microbial transfer in the womb. And then when they get seeded or colonized, it's called vaginal seeding at birth through the mom's vaginal canal. So we think that mom's vaginal microbes seed baby's gut, and then some gut microbes from mom at birth also seed baby, either through some fecal fluid during labor and birth, or through breastfeeding. So these microbes that baby inherit from mom, or even in the immediate environment, hospital or home, in the first 1,000 days is crucial to basically train a baby's immune system for lifelong health, right? Because when, I always kind of like tell the story of like an island, if you think of a barren island, there's no vegetation, no animals, life form at first, and then you kind of like have your first coconut trees and maybe your squirrel or birds. So what seed that island first is actually quite important. There's even new research coming out which strain of the bacteria seeds infant gut dictates their lifelong immune system, trains their immune system, right? So over time, you get more and more variety of trees on that island, or, kind of you have different animals. And so it finally matures into a very adult-like state around 3 to 5 years old. So the chance to really influence and modulate, in scientific terms, the gut microbiome is really in the first 1,000 days, which technically starts in pregnancy. So like in conception, and 1,000 days ends around 2+ years old. But in terms of scientific terms, the gut matures between 3 to 5. It's because it's more malleable in the early days, and what mom eats in her microbiome, although the microbes are not transferring to baby, the functional genes of the mom's pregnant gut and vaginal influences baby's health as well. So it starts at conception, actually. So that's kind of like was really profound to me, that if this is such an important time period, why is there no gut health tests for this very crucial time? So I decided to create that. So our flagship product is a gut microbiome test and vaginal microbiome test for pregnant mamas and trying to conceive mamas, and also in the first couple years of life. But now we have a gut test for older kids, 3 to 18, and adults as well, because a lot of dads want to test as well. And so I think, and kind of getting to the core of the answer, in early life, we are experiencing what I call a pediatric chronic health crises. 1 in 2 kids today have at least one chronic condition like eczema or allergies. And more often than not, it's linked to the gut. We see major imbalances in these kids early on. So we have, we help parents address it. We can address imbalances. Again, coming back to that island, when there's fewer vegetation and animals, it's easy to kind of uproot the bad ones and kind of put in the good ones there to have a balance of ecosystem that you like to see. The more mature the baby's gut, a child's gut, say like post 5 years old, doesn't mean you can't change what's on the island. It's just harder, right? If you imagine, you might have to bring in tractors and really uproot roots that has been there for 5 years, and then plant new seeds and then have them grow. And sometimes the new seeds don't grow. So in a way, the best time really is in the early days, but it's never too late, I would say, because there's always, because our, again, immune system is so influenced by our gut, it's always so important to check in and see where you can improve.
That's so awesome. And really, there's no conversation. I didn't have these types of conversations with, and I even had my babies with midwives, and there was no conversation about getting my microbiome checked and making sure that it was in balance before I gave birth. So this is awesome. I'm loving this.
Yeah, and it might be a factor of just like we didn't have the technology until very recently, right?
Right.
Like DNA sequencing has just been around for the past, what, 20 couple of decades. And it used to be $10,000 to sequence your DNA. Now we're sequencing the microbiome's DNA, so not human DNA. We throw that out. But it's come, so cheap that it's within reach where we can offer a product at under $200, basically.
Amazing. That's so cool. Okay, awesome. We can move to the next slide. All right, hold on. I got to get our faces out of the way so I can read our questions. Okay, so tell me how Tiny Health's gut test is different from other tests on the market.
Yeah, so there's actually I want to say three things, but I'll say four. Four main differences. One is the technology that we use, which is shotgun metagenomic sequencing. It's a mouthful, but it's the gold standard that's used in microbiome research now. So most papers that you read about the gut microbiome is using shotgun technology, not PCR, not 16S, not RNA. Sometimes RNA is used, but they're used hand in hand with DNA sequencing. So that's one, and I'll expound into that and show some graphs later. Number two, we are much more affordable, as I mentioned, under 200, like 199. And it's a much simpler collection kit. Those of you who are maybe familiar with PCR-based tests, GI map, GI effects, you have to kind of scoop a whole chunk of stool. And that process sometimes is pretty gross. And some customers just don't, they kind of find it really uncomfortable. Ours is a very basic swab, and it has a technology where it dries or kills the microbes or preserves the microbes once you sample. So you're sampling from a diaper or a soiled toilet paper, very easy. And you only need a little bit because shotgun sequencing is a technology where you're just chopping up all the DNA of the microbes and reassembling them. So we get the comprehensive, all the bacteria, fungi, parasites, archaea in your gut. So we give you 100% breakdown of everything in your gut versus some tests only give you a partial picture. So number three, we are the only gut test for pregnancy in the pediatric population. So our reference ranges is the only one in the market that changes with age. And also if you're trying to conceive or pregnant or postpartum. So like a 2-year-old infant who's not been exposed to solids or solids will have a different range where it's healthy or unhealthy compared to a 9-month-old who's exposed to solids. And a 2-year-old will see something different. A 5-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 20-year-old will have different reference ranges. So we really spend a lot of time doing R&D to establish these ranges. And the fourth differentiator is that we're the only test that has predictive biomarkers for conditions such as eczema, food allergies, asthma.
Awesome. Okay. I might have to ask you more about that, but let's move on to the next slide. So because I think you have some graphics to show us. Yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, I think, since a lot of us here are practitioners and practitioners are traditionally more familiar with PCR-based tests, I wanted to show some graphs for how we're really different, right? What is shotgun sequencing? So I'll start with the comparison between, on the left is what we use at Tiny Health. It's called deep shotgun sequencing. So the pretty graphs, the green Y is bifidobacteria, a really beneficial bacteria. So you're seeing and then the red kind of blobs are E. coli, for example. So you're seeing individually what are all the bacteria in your gut, plus the tiny little dots are the functions. So we don't just kind of tell you who is there, you have X% E. coli, X% bifidobacteria. We tell you how they're functioning. Are they histamine producing? Or how is your short chain fatty acids? Do you have enough butyrate production, fermentation byproduct from fiber, digestive microbes, right? Do you have microbes that can digest protein? So we're also measuring the functional output of these microbes, which is much more superior because basically in layman's term, you don't want to just know who's there, but what they're doing too, because maybe you have these microbes lying around, but they're not functioning as intended. Maybe they're dead. I don't know. Maybe they're just not helpful, or maybe they are low in numbers, but functioning really well. So we measure that. On the right side is an older DNA sequencing technology called 16S. Basically, this is a technology that a company called Ombre, it used to be called Thrive, uses. So if you find a test that is $99 or $129, usually that's a 16S technology, and the turnaround time is like 1 to 2 weeks. That's a sign it's 16S. As you can see, is a blurred picture. So you can kind of see, I think it's a bifidobacteria. It might be lactobacillus. I'm not sure. It's maybe an E. coli, maybe Escherichia. You can't tell. So it's not a perfect picture. So then you go to the next slide. And this is where most practitioners are familiar with the GI maps, GI effects, doctor's data. There's definitely a lot of tests in the market that's around $399, $450 that measures PCR, which means that you're getting very precise, accurate data down to a very low abundance. So like maybe if you have traces of it, like 0.001% of Candida, you may want to use this test if you want to detect any presence of Candida, for example. PCR can give you a very accurate picture, but it's not the full picture. So one issue with PCR-based tests is that if you're only getting a slice of it, and you're not breaking it down by relative abundance, how do you know that E. coli detected high is that 0.01% of your gut, or is that 1% of your gut? It makes a huge difference, right? So you kind of just have to, like, I guess, trust that these ranges are like accurate and meaningful. We think that there's a whole lot going on in the gut, and that's shown by research to influence the gut, not just these 30, 50 microbes that are listed in a PCR test, right? So that's why it's like PCR tests are accurate when you want to know specifically if you have that bug, but it's just not going to give you the comprehensive picture. You're not sure if like what you're getting is a total of 5% of your gut, or is it a total of 50% of your gut, right? But with Tiny Health, you're getting 1%, 100%, everything in there that's in your gut. So we get a lot of questions like, oh, do you measure Candida? Do you measure parasites? Do you measure H. pylori? Yada, yada, yada. The answer is yes. Like, we measure every single microbe in the gut, right? However, using our technology, our detection limit right now is 0.05% resolution. So anything under that, like it's too little for us to be sure if that microbe is there. So we don't show anything under 0.005 relative abundance. So if you have really, really small traces of Candida, it might not show up in our test, for example. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's pretty cool because it sounds like you can see everything, like everything that's in your gut. If it's a certain level, like you're going to know that it's there.
And, this is where sometimes like, we think, because the gut depends on who all are there, right? So if it's in such trace amounts, does it mean it's a troublemaker, right? Maybe it's just too little because it's too little to be detected. Could it actually be influencing the gut in a big way? We don't know yet, frankly, but we believe that it may not be influencing the gut in a large way.
Sure. Makes sense. Absolutely. Awesome. Okay.
But we do see Candida, we see H. pylori, we've seen parasites for sure. And usually those are accompanied by symptoms.
Certainly. Okay.
And the last slide here is RNA, which is a company called Viome uses. I think they're the only one who uses RNA. As you can see in the helix on the bottom, DNA's helix is a double structure, is very stable, right? And what that means is that if you sequence your gut like twice in the same day, if you poo twice a day, or if you took your stool sample today and took another one tomorrow, it's identical. We've had hundreds of people do that, and you cannot differentiate the results. With RNA, unfortunately, because it's measuring the gene expression of the microbes, which, it's a gene expression. RNA is by nature less stable structure, right? So it's because it's measuring the gene expression of the microbe at the point of time. If you were vegan today and you measured your gut using RNA technology, and then you ate meat the next day, you're going to get vastly different results. So scientists and microbiologists, if you ask anyone, any microbiologist in academia, they're going to like tell you, we're not sure how Viome using RNA technology can recommend dietary and supplement suggestions, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but is this truly like, what academics say? Like, how are they recommending long-term dietary and supplement changes on something so temporal? Now, RNA, you see all the dots, they're very good at measuring the functions of the microbes, right? So less emphasis on the microbes itself, but more on the functions. So at that point in time, if you have inflammation or an acute thing happening, you're going to measure the functions really accurately. And it's really amazing for research. But again, they've never published papers on this, so we don't know how they're utilizing that RNA technology to for like long-term, kind of health recommendations, so dietary recommendations. It would have to be based on a lot of internal research. And yeah, maybe they've built, a huge database and they've done a lot of internal research. It's just a black box right now, and we just don't know how it's done. So that's just my take, and a lot of like microbiologists' take on this method of sequencing.
So it sounds like you're saying that the RNA sequencing is more of like a snapshot.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
100%.
Like a snapshot in time. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So does Tiny Health Gut test for Akkermansia and short fatty acid production and other important keystone strains? Because I know like some of the providers that we're working with are using things like GI map and they do test for Akkermansia. So does Tiny Health test for Akkermansia as well?
Yeah, like I said before, we test for, basically we don't have a panel. So when you have a PCR, when you run a PCR test, basically it's very clear what they're looking for. You're probing, right? Basically 30, 50 microbes that you want to see. So Akkermansia could be in their probe, and you can see that. For us, it's like, shotgun is like chopping up all the DNA of the microbes, and you're discovering everything that's in there. And we're matching the DNA code to like, okay, there's a DNA code structure for Akkermansia municipilia. I can never pronounce it.
Yeah, that's it.
Strain XYZ, right? And so if the code exists out there, we're matching it with our technology, and then we show you like what you have there. So we actually have also the ability to go down to strain level Akkermansia. We haven't launched that feature yet. It's coming December, January. So when we have, that's the other power of our tests or our technology, is the ability to go down to strain level, which is basically what you see on your Akkermansia ingredients, right? You have the strain. And then if you buy probiotics in the market, technically a high quality probiotic should have strain, which is like, for example, Bifidobacteria infantis EVC001, Vivo's B infantis probiotic. It should have the mix of numbers and letters. And that's like where there's more credibility behind the strains used. So we can eventually show when we launch this feature in our app, to see if probiotics you're taking are actually colonizing in your gut if it's from an external source.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay, so it sounds like it's just more expansive. Like you guys don't tell the test what it's going to test for. Like the test determines it, your gut tells the test, this is what's in here.
I love that representation. Yes, exactly. We don't know what we're going to find. So, and again, we've had some people just doing like 2 tests at once just to see how reliable our product is. And I kid you not, it's a twin sample. It's so consistent and reliable and reproducible as well.
Wow, awesome. Okay, so what about the short chain fatty acid producing strains?
Yeah, so that is a functional output of microbes. You can detect short chain fatty acid producing microbes like butyrate functions, acetate, which is, in adult health, you want more butyrate function. In babies, you want more acetate, which is usually dictated by bifidobacteria or bifidobacteria in breast milk, for example. And then propionate is another one we measure. So yeah, that's one of the few functional outputs we measure, apart from a lot of other kind of like nutrient digestion markers like fiber digestion, protein, carb digestion, vitamin production capacity of the microbes, right? So you could take supplements and vitamins. Your microbe also has the ability to produce vitamins. So if your microbes kind of have enough capacity, you may not need to take in as much from diet or supplements, for example. So we can tell all that.
Wow, that's fascinating. Very cool. Okay. Any other keystone strains that you want to mention? Sorry.
I mean, there's just so many. If the colibacteria is one that's related to lower inflammation, so we want to see that. Everything in our test is, we give you a full readout of all the microbes that are in your gut by percentages. And then we
Okay.
also have the main meat and potatoes of our report are all these key insights that we think are important. We've now categorized it to the group of beneficial bacteria, this category. Do you have enough beneficial bacteria? Do you have disruptive bacteria, like opportunistic pathogens? Candida is considered an opportunistic pathogen. So again, we think in low levels, it's not destructive, it's not too bad, but in higher levels, it may be, right? And then parasites are in that category too. Again, we believe that there are some parasites that are neutral and they're not harmful.
Sure.
But in higher amounts, again, we have this reference ranges to trigger what is alarming and what's not. So we put it into the perspective of beneficial, disruptive, digestive health, balance and robustness, which is kind of reflected with diversity of your gut, and other insights.
Awesome. Okay. Very cool. Okay. So here's where it starts to get personal. So how can a gut test help with issues like eczema, sleep, food allergies, colic in babies, and constipation?
Yeah, so this is kind of what really prompted me to start Tiny Health is I had a C-section of my daughter 5.5 years ago, and this is what I was learning. Like I wanted to research if that would kind of implicate her health at all. And I uncovered all this literature around how C-section baby guts look very different from vaginally born babies, and that C-section babies have a higher risk for eczema, food allergies, asthma, and hay fever. So this co-progression of allergic diseases called atopic march. So I was obviously freaking out and like, oh my gosh, did I screw her up? I couldn't control my C-section. What do I do? And then I found another body of literature where you can restore a baby's gut, right? There's a strong paper that one of our fundamental papers that Tiny Health is based off of is that by 1 year, if the C-section signature is gone, and you can modify it through breastfeeding, through certain strains of probiotics, through some dietary actions. If that C-section signature is gone by year 1, her risk for asthma would have been reduced by 3x. So we now have a C-section signature in our test for infants 1 year and under. So we do have some of these predictive biomarkers for eczema, food allergies. There is a colicky baby signature, for example, and that has been published. Like the colicky babies have a missing, beneficial bacteria that we want to replenish. And then in older kids, we commonly see, food allergies, asthma, constipation. A lot of like parents that come to us, they obviously go to their pediatricians first, and pediatricians will maybe prescribe Miralax for constipation, right? Or steroids for eczema. And most parents are aware that there are side effects to some of these medications, and they're trying to heal it from the root cause. Because if you heal things from maybe like a more superficial level, it keeps coming back, right? So gut is truly one of those root causes factors. So doing a gut test, especially early on, again, if you go back to my conversation earlier, when the gut is more malleable, right? It's not so set in stone yet. That is your best chance to really set a good trajectory for your child. But again, if you have a 12-year-old kid who has some condition, like my daughter is now like almost 6, so she kind of has an adult gut. I'll tell you a funny story. Like she had some constipation, and our family just moved, about nearly 2 years ago from California to Austin, Texas. And who used to shop at the farmer's market, and our water and food produce was really fresh. And then here we kind of like, as we're moving, we're just eating, more conventional stuff, right? We did a gut test for our whole family. Everybody's gut metrics went downhill. And especially my daughter was pretty hard hit. So we're like, oh my gosh, like what happened? And it may be a new environment, household, but I think we nailed it down to the water and food source. So like we get our water here from Lake Travis. It's not like, it's not the same as California water. So things like that can really influence your gut. And so for her, it resulted in a lot of food sensitivities and constipation. And so it took us about 1+ year, and now she's much better. and she can now tolerate a lot of foods. So, you know, really truly I created this product to really improve our health, my family's health, but also bring it to everyone and who deserves to understand their gut better and see how they can address imbalances.
Awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, I wish you would have been around when I had my now 10-year-old, because I did everything right. You know, he was a vaginal birth, breastfeeding, and he still developed asthma. You know, it did the march. It started out as eczema, it developed into hay fever, just like you're describing, and now he has asthma as a 10-year-old. So you fully convinced me. We're all going to do a gut test, especially him, because I've started giving him some of our strains because, you know, research is showing that he might be missing some of our really important beneficial strains like Akkermansia and some of our butyrate producing strains. So it will be
Mhm.
really cool to see what's actually going on in there.
Yeah, and Akkermansia again is important for gut lining and metabolic health, but also prevention of atopic march of allergic diseases, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
it is part of the factor. And the part that you mentioned that was interesting. So in my son, I had a vaginal home birth, you know, 2 years after my daughter. And what I learned that as I sequenced my pregnancy gut and vaginal microbiome, my gut was totally imbalanced. I actually didn't have a bifidobacteria. I had no Akkermansia, zero. So these are two in our test, the most important microbes that a mom who's pregnant should have to carry on to pass on to her baby through a vaginal birth or breastfeeding. So now we have so much data. We see that in 30% of our vaginally born breastfed babies that you think everything was perfect and should have been perfect,
Yeah.
they did again, not to like assign any like guilt or anything, but most often when we have the mom sample, the mom did not have the bifidobacteria or Akkermansia to transfer to a baby despite the vaginal birth. So
Yeah.
what I learned through that is that shoot, I need to correct my gut. You know, if I wanted a third baby, not to say I am, but you know, then I need to get my bifidobacteria and Akkermansia levels up, right? So it took me again a year and a half of dietary and supplement actions. My BIFs now are consistently at 10%, even without supplementation, without any probiotics. I did probiotics, and then sometimes you have to switch brands and you have
Yeah.
to add a prebiotic, an
Yeah.
HMO supplement for it to colonize. So it took me about 6 months of experimentation, and I maintained it through dietary means to continue providing the prebiotics to the probiotics. And I have not been taking any probiotics for the past year, and my levels are still at 10%. Like imagine I had zero coming
Wow.
in our tests, and now I have 10%. Akkermansia is interesting. Like I took Pendulum, and while I took Pendulum, because I had zero,
Yeah.
then I had like, I think 4%. Then the moment I stopped taking it, it kind of went back down.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get it to colonize. Akkermansia is one of those bugs that if you don't have any, it's going to be really hard to colonize. And you may sometimes need to work on it for 6 months, a year, and both dietary and supplement changes, right? So that's kind of why, you know, sometimes it's like we want things to be like a magic bullet, but it takes longer. Sometimes because it can't colonize, you just have to keep taking it. You know,
Yeah.
ideally you can take it, it colonizes, and you can stop taking it. That's the goal, right? And that's
Yeah.
what our test provides, this transparency. But sometimes if it doesn't colonize, this is a sign where I guess you just have to keep taking it.
Yeah. So, I mean, this just makes the argument for doing all of this early, you know, getting your microbiome checked maybe during pregnancy and then, you know, checking your baby early on so that you can mold the microbiome into, you know, what they'll end up having for the rest of their lives. It's awesome. So cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. We'll move on to our next slide. What else do we have? Okay. Yeah. So, who should take a tiny health gut test? I think I know the answer to this. I can probably answer this one.
What is your answer?
My whole family, the whole family's doing one.
Everyone. Yeah. I mean, truly, I mean, if you believe that data is more power, and some people are not like that, right? Some people are like, don't tell me, I don't want to know, I don't want to change anything. But if you truly like, you know, believe that your gut health is so fundamental to your immune health and your like, you know, acute and chronic health, frankly, then there is no harm to taking a test to look at your baseline, basically. We think that everyone should proactively do a gut test at least once or twice a year to keep up with it. Because these days, people just get prescribed antibiotics so much for every little thing. And sometimes it is very scary. Maybe it's the right thing to do and you have to do it, right? It's life-saving sometimes, right? It is overused, but sometimes you just kind of have to do it. So we think especially, it applies for adults too, but especially in younger kids, when their microbiomes are changing so quickly, you want to take a baseline sample, and then we see antibiotics coming in, wiping out their entire gut. Which is why we tell people you don't even take a test 4 to 6 weeks post antibiotics treatment ending, because you're not going to see anything. You're going to be disappointed. We've had some people do it at 4 weeks, and we see all bad bacteria. You can do it, but again, these microbes are coming back, and it takes a little bit of time for the good bacteria to come back, and colonize, right? So in a way, if you have a baseline, you know what your gut state was before treatment, and then we can help guide you on how to restore it back to a healthy baseline is our goal. So, proactively doing, and then, who else should take, I mentioned if you have major travels, to maybe a foreign, rural country, moving, like when I moved from the West Coast out here, my whole family took a hit. A stomach bug. So there's more research coming out now that if you have a stomach virus, that can last for months. So we're starting to see data, if you had diarrhea or flu, stomach flu, even 6 months after, we see those microbes lingering and continuing to cause problems. So that could be another sign to check in. Changing food and water sources, new medication, especially antibiotics, but also other medication, any new supplements. There's a lot of reasons, right? We actually, just because in the interest of the audience here, which I know are a lot of practitioners, we do have a practitioner program that's run out by our medical director, Taylor. She's an MD, PhD in microbiology, and she was a pediatric physician at Boston Children's Hospital. So she helps offer free training to our practitioners who want to interpret our shotgun sequencing tests, because again, a lot of practitioners are coming from more PCR-based tests, and they're trying to learn how to interpret our shotgun sequencing tests. So we offer free training. We also have a practitioner portal where you can view all your patient or your client's results. That's HIPAA compliant, all in one portal, so you can access them given consent. When we also have a special price for practitioners for their clients at a cheaper rate, and we're building resources to really help people independently interpret the results. We now also, really exciting, we're offering a pro version of our tests with non-microbial markers. We're getting some requests for these non-microbial markers like secretory IgA, calprotectin, elastase. I can never pronounce this better. Glucuronidase. So there's a lot of these, that practitioners are used to interpreting more immune health. That again, there are adult ranges established, but no pediatric range or pregnancy range has been established yet. So it's a little bit right now we're going to base off of the adult ranges, but over time, Tiny Health does want to develop these non-microbial ranges for the maternal and pediatric population as well.
Very cool. I love that. I love provider resources. Awesome. You're supporting that community. Okay. So I think you kind of answered this a little bit, but I don't know if you had anything else to add. So the best time to take a gut microbiome test.
Yeah. So maybe I'll add, if you're thinking about conceiving a child in the future, do it now. Anytime in the future. You don't know how long it's going to take to restore your own gut. But if your gut and vaginal microbiome are in tip-top shape, then it's great. I would say the earliest for a baby sample is 7 days. If you take that 7-day sample, it will give us a very clear picture of what seeded the baby at birth, which for long-term kind of knowledge, it's very telling, because, things may not start developing till later. And coming back to that first sample at birth is very powerful sometimes. So maybe immediately it may look, a little bit scary usually, but it gives us a lot of clue. And then 2 to 3 months, wait time to see if breastfeeding, if mom is breastfeeding, if any of these microbes from mom is transferring to baby. Sometimes it's not. If they're formula feeding, maybe there has to be some adjustments to a brand that's more gut friendly, for example. And then 6 to 9 months is a crucial time when solids have started. So baby's gut starting to change. So you want to check in again how that's changing. Is it changing in the right trajectory? 12 months is a critical biomarker for asthma prediction. That's the paper I referenced earlier. And then, as they enter daycare, they wean from breast milk, major changes. If they happen to get an ear infection and unfortunately require antibiotics, great to check in. Again, like ideally we have a baseline sample so we can help people recover from antibiotics, even for older kids and adults too. And then any new symptoms like eczema, constipation symptoms that come up, even, now we had adults with long COVID coming to us because a lot of adults who have long COVID have a ton of gut symptoms. So when we've worked with long COVID patients, we see so many imbalances and they now have a way to work on their gut issues. But, ideally, we'd love to launch more research into this area to help specific groups of people, right? Sure. So in the future, Tiny Health will have some of these more condition-driven programs and research to help certain categories of people. And then I think I already mentioned, a very popular question that we have is like, how long after antibiotics do they sample? So 4 to 6 weeks is good. We anecdotally are seeing some impact on vaccinations to a baby's gut too, interestingly enough. So if parents want to see the immediate impact of vaccinations, they can sample right away. If they want to be safe, they can wait 3 to 4 weeks, I would say. So really interesting. I think in coming months, we'll have a lot of data that we want to publish to show some of these insights. And then I would say the vaginal microbiome, we have a vaginal microbiome test, is very fascinating too. So postpartum, the vaginal microbiome becomes disrupted for about 12 to 18 months. It partially depends on hormones returning. Weaning has a factor. A menstruation coming back has a factor. But when a vaginal microbiome is disrupted and you get pregnant again, there may be higher risk of preterm labor. And the vaginal microbiome is also an indicator of IVF success if you're going that route. So the vaginal microbiome is a hugely important ecosystem as well, that we're also very interested in kind of like researching and looking into.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm so glad that you're like on the forefront of that innovation and research. And I had no idea about the vaginal microbiome in terms of infertility, but that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of like, at first the scientists at Tiny Health were like, why is our vaginal microbiome disrupted postpartum? Why is God punishing us post-birth? But then we were like, maybe it's just a natural child spacing mechanism because it is harder to get pregnant with a disrupted microbiome. So when weaning happens and hormones return and you're kind of signaling to your body it's time to have another baby, then it's safe again to do it. So the body works mysteriously in its own way. We think there's a reason for everything, which is why it's so beautiful studying the microbiome in various parts of the body.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I love it. It's my favorite topic. My husband's dying for me to go back to work so I could start to talk to people like you about the microbiome. He's like, I don't know what you're saying right now. I know that you're like antibiotics, which I'm not. They serve a purpose, but I always ask our pediatrician, I'm like, now I'm at the point, we've had so many ear infections and so many rounds of antibiotics. I'm like, is this life or death? Like, tell me, and then we'll make a decision on whether or not we need antibiotics. But
if talking about ear infections, it's viral. It's not even bacterial.
Yeah.
And they can't tell. And physicians just want to be on the safe side. So they're like, let's just do it anyway. I actually, I don't recommend this for everyone, right? Because everyone has their own risk tolerance. It's up to you to make that decision. But I got an ear infection a few months ago, and my son had one too, and I held back. I did supplements, and it turned out it was viral, and we didn't need it. But there were moments where I was like, oh gosh, like, did I, that's why I understand it's so hard as a parent. You don't know what to do. If you don't have the tools and you don't feel confident with the alternatives, then you're just gonna, you're just doing your best, right? So whatever decision you make, I'm sure at the time you're making your best decision. So I've learned not to be so hard on myself, not to be so hard on other people. We're all just trying our best.
We are. But let me tell you, it's difficult living with an asthmatic kid.
Oh, well, I hope we help you find something if, we take, get him on a gut test.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. I'm so excited. Okay, so if you're a healthcare provider, be sure to create an account with us here at Pendulum. You'll have access to our wholesale pricing, our affiliate program, and also our microbiome research that we've already done and upcoming, and any also just provider resources. Like Cheryl was saying, we have tons of provider resources, patient-facing detail aids, and protocols for providers. So it's a great hub if you're looking for more information and education on the science behind our strains. Next slide, see if we can get to some of these questions. Yeah, so like I was talking about, resources available to providers, some protocols here. We have patient-facing detail aids, and then protocols for providers as well. So yeah, so if you stuck around to the end, which I hope that you did, you can use some codes here for some discounts on Pendulum products. So if you're placing a wholesale order, you can use WS Tiny 40 to get $40 off your wholesale purchase. So that's when you're purchasing 12 bottles or more at the wholesale price. That's how that code works. And then if you're looking to try Pendulum products, you can use code TINY30, and this is for 30% off your first membership order. So this is more of our direct-to-consumer pricing, and this is not a wholesale order. You can just purchase one bottle and get 30% off using TINY30. So we really appreciate everybody attending. Cheryl, I'll let you just sort of go through your products here, and then we'll try to get to some of these questions. We have about 11 minutes left.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we can get through all of them. So yeah, just to show kind of what we offer, the full suite. Our website is very kind of like first 1,000 days heavy, but and so most people think we only have tests for mom and babies, but we actually have a child test for 3 to 18 years old. Again, geared towards speaking language to parents, and also like child approved supplements, I would say, like age appropriate supplements and recommendations, and then adults too. So we don't always have parents. Sometimes we, for example, had a couple, they're not married yet, but they are dating, and it's funny because when I got their results back, this is early in the day, a couple of years ago, I was like, are you living together? Because your guts look so similar. And they're like, yes, we've been living together for a couple of years. I can tell if someone has been living together or not, based on their microbiomes and even family microbiomes. You can tell if, say, a sibling is at daycare and eat a different kind of food, they have a slightly different microbiome. But usually if they're kind of in the same environment, eating the same foods, doing the same things, the family microbiome tends to look very similar. So it's really fun to see family microbiome communities. So we have, like I mentioned, in pregnancy, which is also to try and conceive gut tests. Postpartum, you would also get that test. So we're seeing like if you're, again, your breast milk is kind of continuing to transfer your gut microbes to baby. For example, Akkermansia is one of those bugs that we know are vertically transmitted from mom to baby. If mom had it, right? Usually that's how babies get it. And then we have the vaginal tests. In the future, we are getting some requests for pet tests. Some people consider their dogs and cats part of the family, rightfully so. And your dogs and cats are licking your kids and you're sharing microbiome. And there could be interesting signs there for how that pet microbiome is or isn't influencing your family's microbiome. So that could be up in the future.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, we have people write in all the time, actually, that they're using Akkermansia on their pets. So
Oh,
consider
wow.
that too. Yeah.
Actually, that's the other thing we recommend is getting a pet because, yeah, Akkermansia is more present in dogs, and your chances of getting Akkermansia is higher if you have a pet.
So cool. I love that. Okay. So one last code here. You can order a tiny health test. And if you use Pendulum 20, you could get $20 off your first order. All right. Let's get to some of these questions. All right. So I'll take, I think this was the first one. I think Jen's answering some of them for us. Okay. So I've heard Pendulum's Akkermansia is non-colonizing. Is that true? My baby has none, and I was hoping to transfer some to him by nursing and taking the supplement.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think we can both tackle that one a little bit. So we don't really know if Akkermansia is colonizing when you're taking it in supplement form. It's not new to the human microbiome, but it is new in terms of research and it being available in supplement form. But I think like Cheryl was saying, if it's a baby that you're talking about, maybe you have time to change that. Cheryl, what do you think?
Yeah, again, we don't know conclusively yet. I think we're about to do the data science and we'll have a lot more information soon. Like how many people are taking pendulum. For example, we're seeing colonizing. I saw a temporary colonization in my gut. I think it's attributed to pendulum. And then for this specific question, yeah, I think if you're taking it as a breastfeeding mom, it could transfer to baby too. That could be a route that's people are more comfortable with rather than supplementing their babies directly, because
Sure.
pendulums, capsules are also not technically approved for babies and kids. But Colleen mentioned she does give it to her kids. So it's really up to you at the end of the day. But yeah, this is a tough one. We don't know. There's a lot we don't
Yeah.
know. Mhm.
Yeah, and we do know, I can say, just like being a dietitian and we here at Pendulum, we really try to promote restoring the health of your microbiome through dietary choices. So Akkermansia's energy source is polyphenols. So that's why we developed a polyphenol booster product. We looked at our Akkermansia strain in vitro and we threw a bunch of different polyphenols at it to see, well, which ones really help it to colonize and grow. It happened to be green tea extract, red grapeseed, and pomegranate. So those are the three that we put into our polyphenol booster. But through, our butyrate producing strains need soluble fiber, and the Akkermansia's energy source is polyphenols. So the more that you're consuming those foods, the better chance you have of those strains, being happy and sticking around and colonizing. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. So with any kind of missing microbes that you're trying to replenish in your gut, that's essential for health. Think about what the prebiotics could be, right? So like when I was missing bifidobacteria, the prebiotic to that worked for colonizing my BIFs are HMOs. Which are naturally present in breast milk. It's 1/3 of breast milk, but as adults, we don't really drink breast milk anymore. Thankfully, there are supplements on the market that contain HMOs. So that's what helped me colonize. And HMOs, we've actually seen, again, from our data, helping some Akkermansia colonize, right? Again, it's more anecdotal. We haven't done the actual data science yet, but there is, always think about the food to the probiotics that will keep them around, sticking around.
yeah, absolutely. Let's see, hold on. Let me look at this next question. Okay, so and I think it's more of like another colonization question. So what's the best way to add Akkermansia to the gut? I took a bottle of the Pendulum Akkermansia pills and retested, and I still didn't have it present in the gut.
Takes
And
a long time. Yeah, sometimes it's not like a 1 month thing. Again, like imagine your mature adult gut, it's just sometimes it takes months of combined dietary and supplement actions. Like it took me 6 months, right, for my BIFs to go from 0 to 10%. So I think be patient and keep doing what you're doing.
yeah, and also, we hear from a lot of customers and patients too that their symptoms are resolving, but it's not necessarily always showing up in the test. So we don't necessarily know why that is. But again, like you were saying, just to reiterate that, like if you are really low or undetectable levels, it takes a long time to restore levels. So that could be
And
part of
graft.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah. But if symptoms are improving, again, probiotics can be giving you a transient effect, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but then you just have to keep taking it. Now, in babies, we see that colonization, if you're taking the right strains and the right prebiotics, it does colonize and you're done. You don't need to give them anymore, right? And for kids, we say as little intervention as possible. So once you're done, you don't have to continue, right? For adults, it's a little bit different.
Sure. Sure. Makes sense. Okay. Curious how tiny health testing relates to gut Zoomer 3.0 complete that measures bacteria DNA from a one-time stool sample.
Consumer is one of the ones I can't remember if they're using. I think you check with them or ask. Sometimes websites don't disclose what technology they're using. Are they using PCR 16S, which is a lower resolution, out of date test, frankly, or technology, or are they using shotgun sequencing? So find out. I don't know if it's DNA. Yes, definitely not RNA. But I'm not sure.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so should the pregnancy test be used for the breastfeeding mother?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we usually, like, if your baby or child you're still breastfeeding, kind of their gut doesn't look good, I think it's a good clue to check in on the mom's gut too. So it may be like, you want to, there are, like, I detected a lot of imbalances in mine, so I had to fix mine to transfer to my baby for their best health, right? So I think it's definitely beneficial.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. Of course, I mean, okay, that wasn't a question. All right. So for Pendulum, are you working on a kid's version? I opened the capsule for my 11-month-old and he still doesn't have Akkermansia colonized after supplementing for a few months, wondering if it's dying in his stomach and that's why it's not colonizing. So by opening the capsule, you're definitely losing some of the viability, but our chief medical officer still thinks that definitely some is getting through. But if it has just been for a couple of months, again, I think we've already kind of gone through this, but I would keep it up and really try to support with, whatever types of polyphenols you can get in your kiddo. And let's see. Yeah, some of it definitely is dying in the stomach. But yeah, so like Cheryl was saying, it may be just more of a transient effect, but he's young enough. So, maybe we could get it to colonize.
Mhm.
Let's see. Okay. Also, oh, okay, same person. Also, I did a GI map and it showed normal levels of Akkermansia, but my son got none from me. Any insight as of why? Is the GI map incorrect?
So meaning your son had it, but you didn't have it, the
So
mom?
she's saying she did the GI map and it showed normal levels of Akkermansia, but her son got none
Oh,
from.
she had
Yeah.
some, but her son had
Yeah.
none.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it depends on how old your baby is. Normally, Akkermansia doesn't appear until 1 year old. It's really interesting. So we don't, if you use a tiny health report, which is why you should always use an age appropriate test, because in a GI map for your son is going to show you alarming, like your son doesn't have Akkermansia, like alarm at 11 months old, but we will say it's normal because we don't expect to see it until 12 months old.
Wow.
In science, this is all kind of like reference ranges based on scientific publishing, right? So again, use an age appropriate test for the best accurate picture. It will probably show up later in life. Again, sometimes we see like mom having none and baby has some. Could be from dad, it could be from sibling, it could be from a dog, so there's definitely different access points.
Okay, interesting. All right. Is there a healthcare practitioner price for resale, or do patients order the kit directly through Tiny Health?
There is a practitioner price. So it's up to you if you want to transfer that to your patient, client, or, some people want to keep it and even charge a consultation fee. And we also provide free training to interpret these reports to practitioners.
Okay. And this is Kimberly again. So can you give the Pendulum polyphenol blend to a baby? I don't see why not. Of course, we haven't studied this. I have to give this disclaimer. We haven't studied it in babies. We haven't studied the products in pediatrics either. We are looking to do that in the future just for safety and tolerance, but we do have plenty of customers and patients that do use the products. I don't know about the polyphenol blend. Actually, I haven't heard of anybody using that, but I would think that you would be okay to do so. So yeah.
We
Great.
always, just mention to check with your practitioner, whoever you're working.
Yes. Great idea. Yes. Also had that. All right. So can you comment on the data behind extended breastfeeding and how the can you comment on the data behind extended breastfeeding and how the gut test can help guide this? I thought I read on your bio that you did extended breastfeeding. Maybe I'm making this up.
Yeah, so it is true. So extended breastfeeding does have more impact, not just from a microbial level, right? Like there's so many things in breast milk that you can't replicate in other nutritional products that goes to baby immune, what do you call it? Immune cells and growth factors and macronutrients, right? So for breastfeeding, as it relates to microbial influence, is that remember I said HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides, is 1/3 of breast milk. That is food or prebiotics to the beneficial bacteria, the probiotics, right? So when we have baby guts, or even if like, say you have a 3-year-old, not baby anymore, still breastfeeding, because some moms do breastfeed for a long time, and they're like, maybe guts are not great, and you want to add a probiotic. If you're still breastfeeding and you're still giving that HMO to baby, there's a higher likelihood that that probiotic will colonize better and kick out the unfriendly bacteria. So like that's one of the primary reasons why extended breastfeeding can help. And or if mom has really good gut health, she is continuing to transfer her good bacteria to baby, to child, for as long as they're breastfeeding. And nature is very selective. It's really interesting. Again, we would love to publish this data, but so far, anecdotally, we see mostly beneficial bacteria transferring from mom to baby, unless mom's gut is really, really inflamed and has a lot of high E. coli type bacteria. We do see those transferring through, but most of the time, nature is pretty selective in a good way.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. So I don't think we got to all of the questions, but we will certainly get an email out to everyone if we didn't address it. I want to be aware of everybody's time. And if you have any questions for Pendulum, you can reach out to hcpinfo@pendulum.com. And yes, this will be emailed out to everyone that's attending or everyone that registered. You'll have access to the recording. So thank you so much, Cheryl. We really appreciate your insight and having you. This is a great conversation. I could pick your brain forever, but I won't do it here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much.
Bye. See
Bye-bye.
you.